Part I, The Bedrock of Risk Management Chapter 1, The Concept of Risk Chapter Abstract. This chapter establishes the fundamental language and philosophy of risk management. It moves beyond the colloquial understanding of risk as mere danger to explore its technical definition as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. We will deconstruct risk into its core components, classify its various forms, and conclude by exploring its dual nature as both a threat to be mitigated and an opportunity to be harnessed for competitive advantage. 11 Defining risk, uncertainty vs danger. 111 The common misconception: risk is not synonymous with danger or loss. While these are significant aspects, a modern definition is more nuanced. Danger is a source of potential harm, a hazard, while risk is the probability and consequence of that harm being realized. 112 The standardized definition introduces the ISO 31000:2018 definition. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. This definition is dissected: effect, a positive or negative deviation from what is expected. Uncertainty, the state of having limited knowledge where it is impossible to exactly describe an outcome. Objectives can apply at different levels: strategic, operational, project, etc. 113 Uncertainty as the core emphasizes that without uncertainty, there is no risk. Risk management is, therefore, the discipline of understanding and addressing uncertainty to empower better decision-making. 12 Components of risk, likelihood and impact. 121 The risk equation. Risk is fundamentally assessed through the function of two variables: likelihood, probability, and impact, consequence, often expressed as risk equals likelihood x impact. 122 Likelihood, the chance that a specific event will occur. Explores methods for estimation: qualitative, high, medium, low; quantitative, percentage, e.g., 10% chance per year; frequency, e.g., once every 10 years. 123 Impact, the result or outcome of an event if it occurs, measured in various units: financial, monetary loss or gain; operational, downtime, reputational damage, safety incidents; strategic, loss of market share, missed opportunities. 124 Velocity and vulnerability, introduces advanced components: how fast a risk can materialize, velocity, and the inherent weaknesses that can be exploited, vulnerability. 13 Inherent risk vs residual risk. 131 Inherent risk, the level of risk in the absence of any actions taken to alter its likelihood or impact. It is the raw or gross risk before any controls are applied. Example: the inherent risk of a data breach for a company holding financial data is very high. 132 Risk controls, the policies, procedures, technical measures, and practices designed to reduce risk. 133 Residual risk, the level of risk that remains after controls have been applied. It is the net risk. Example: after implementing firewalls, encryption, and employee training, the residual risk of a data breach is medium. 134 The management cycle, the primary goal of risk treatment is to ensure that the residual risk is within the organization's risk appetite. 14 Types of risk, a holistic view, a taxonomy of common risk categories, emphasizing that risks are interconnected: strategic risk, risks associated with failed business decisions, execution of strategy, or changes in the competitive landscape, e.g., new competitors, failed M&A. Operational risk, risks arising from internal processes, people, systems, or external events, includes human error, mistakes, misconduct, process failure, inefficient or broken processes, system failure, IT outages, software bugs, external events, supply chain collapse, natural disasters, also called hazard risks. Financial risk, risks related to the financial structure and stability of the organization. Market risk, changes in market prices, interest rates, currencies, equities. Credit risk, the risk that a counterparty will not meet its obligations. Liquidity risk, the inability to meet short-term financial demands. Compliance risk, regulatory risk, the risk of legal or regulatory sanctions, financial loss, or reputational damage from failing to comply with laws, regulations, or codes of conduct. Reputational risk, the damage to an organization's reputation, often a downstream consequence of other risk events. 15. The dual nature of risk, threat and opportunity. 151. The traditional view, downside risk focuses solely on preventing loss and protecting value. This defensive posture is necessary but insufficient for creating competitive advantage. 152. The modern view, upside risk, recognizes that not all uncertainties are negative. Uncertainty can also present opportunities for gain, innovation, and value creation. 153. Risk as opportunity, exploiting positive uncertainty, entering new markets, developing new products, strategic partnerships all involve uncertainty but with potential for reward. Proactive management, just as you mitigate threats, you can enable and enhance opportunities by allocating resources to capitalize on uncertain but favorable outcomes. 154. Integrated decision-making, concludes that effective leaders use risk management not as a simple checklist for compliance, but as a lens to evaluate both the potential downsides and upsides of any strategic choice, leading to more informed and balanced decisions. Chapter 2, The Evolution of Risk Management. Chapter Abstract. This chapter charts the historical trajectory of risk management from its ancient instinctual roots to its current status as a sophisticated, strategic discipline. We will explore how catastrophic failures have acted as catalysts for change, trace the development of formal standards and frameworks, and peer into the future where artificial intelligence and predictive analytics are reshaping the field. Understanding this evolution is crucial to appreciating why modern risk management is practiced the way it is. 21. From reactive to proactive, a historical perspective. 211. Ancient origins, reactive and informal. The fundamental concepts of risk sharing and transfer are ancient. 3rd millennium BC, Babylonian merchants used bottomry loans, a precursor to insurance, where a loan for a voyage would be forgiven if the ship was lost. Code of Hammurabi, c. 1754 BC, contained laws that distributed risk between merchants and investors. 212. The birth of modern insurance, 18th to 19th centuries. The formalization of risk transfer. Lloyd's of London, 1688, evolved from a coffee house to a formalized market for underwriting maritime insurance, creating a structured approach to pooling and pricing risk. Actuarial science, the development of probability theory and mortality tables allowed for the statistical pricing of life insurance, moving risk from the realm of guesswork to calculation. 213. The rise of internal control, 20th century. A shift from pure transfer to internal mitigation. Post-1929 crash, focus on financial controls and auditing to protect assets and ensure accurate reporting. Occupational safety movement, initiatives like the OSHA Act, 1970, in the U.S. forced companies to proactively manage workplace hazards. 214. The era of enterprise risk management, ERM, late 20th century, present. The paradigm shift from siloed, reactive risk handling to a holistic, proactive, and strategic discipline. This was driven by increasing complexity, globalization, and the high cost of failures. 22. Landmark failures and their impact on the discipline. 221. The case of Barings Bank, 1995. The failure, the world's second oldest merchant bank, collapsed due to unauthorized speculative trading by a single derivatives trader, Nick Leeson, who lost £827 million. The impact highlighted catastrophic operational risk stemming from a failure of internal controls, segregation of duties, and management oversight. It became the quintessential case for the need of robust internal checks and a strong risk culture. 222. The Enron collapse, 2001, and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, 2002. The failure, widespread corporate accounting fraud and corruption led to the largest U.S. bankruptcy at that time. The impact directly catalyzed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, which mandated rigorous internal controls over financial reporting for public companies. It cemented the role of executives and boards in risk oversight and made risk management a legal compliance issue. 223. The 2008 global financial crisis, the failure, a meltdown triggered by the collapse of the subprime mortgage market, excessive leverage, and the failure of complex financial products like mortgage-backed securities, MBS, and credit default swaps, CDs. The impact, exposed critical flaws in understanding systemic risk and liquidity risk. It led to stricter banking regulations, Basel III Accords, demanding higher capital reserves against risk, intense scrutiny of credit rating agencies, a renewed focus on stress testing and scenario analysis to understand tail risks. 23. The rise of standards and frameworks. COSO, ISO, 231. The Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission, COSO origin, 1992, initially developed an internal control integrated framework to help companies comply with regulations. COSO ERM, 2004, updated 2017, evolved to a comprehensive enterprise risk management framework, aligning risk with strategy and performance. The 2017 version emphasizes the role of culture and strategy, moving beyond pure compliance. 232. The International Organization for Standardization. ISO 31000 origin, 2009, updated 2018, created as a universal, principles-based standard applicable to any organization, regardless of size, industry, or sector. Philosophy, provides guidelines rather than prescriptions, promoting the integration of risk management into all organizational processes. Its core strength is its flexibility and focus on creating and protecting value. 233. The Basel Accords, banking, a series of international banking regulations, Basel I, II, III, that provide recommendations on banking laws and regulations concerning credit risk, market risk, and operational risk. They represent a highly quantitative, regulatory-driven approach to risk. 24. The future, predictive analytics and AI in risk management. 241. From historical to predictive, the field is shifting from analyzing past events to predicting and preempting future ones. This is the move from key risk indicators, CRIS, to predictive risk indicators, PRE. 242. The role of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, ML. Pattern recognition. AI algorithms can analyze vast data sets, internal transactions, external news, social media, to identify subtle, complex patterns of fraudulent activity or emerging risks that humans would miss. Natural language processing, NLP. Scanning regulatory documents, news articles, and legal texts to identify changing compliance requirements and geopolitical risks. Automated control monitoring, continuously monitoring every transaction in real time for anomalies, drastically reducing response times. 243. Challenges and considerations, algorithmic bias, the risk that AI models perpetuate and amplify existing biases in the data they are trained on. The black box problem, the difficulty in understanding how complex AI models arrive at their conclusions, which can be a significant issue for auditors and regulators. Data quality and governance, predictive power is entirely dependent on the quality, quantity, and integrity of the data fed into the systems. 244. The next frontier, the integration of AI into GRC, governance, risk, and compliance platforms will enable real-time, dynamic risk assessment, transforming risk management from a periodic exercise to a continuous, intelligent process embedded in the fabric of the organization. Chapter 3, Core Principles and Vocabulary. Chapter Abstract. This chapter establishes the philosophical and structural underpinnings of effective risk management. It moves beyond process to explore the guiding principles that should inform every action, the precise vocabulary required for clear communication, the critical role of organizational culture, and the governance structures that assign ownership and accountability. Mastering this chapter is essential for translating risk theory into sustainable practice. 31. The pillars of effective risk management. These are the fundamental, non-negotiable attributes that differentiate a mature, value-adding risk function from a simple compliance exercise. They are often drawn from standards like ISO 31311. Value creation and protection. Risk management is not an end in itself. Its primary purpose is to contribute to the achievement of objectives and the preservation of value by understanding and managing uncertainty. 312. Integral part of organizational processes. Risk management cannot be a separate, siloed activity. It must be embedded into and be an inherent part of all organizational processes, including strategic planning and change management. 313. Structured and comprehensive, while integrated, The approach must be structured and thorough to ensure consistency, comparability, and reliable results. 314 Customized. The framework and process must be tailored to the organization's external and internal context, objectives, and risk profile. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. 315 Inclusive. It must consider human and cultural factors and engage stakeholders to ensure their knowledge, views, and perceptions are considered. This improves the quality of risk identification and assessment. 316 Dynamic, iterative, and responsive to change. Risks and contexts are not static. The process must be capable of responding to new information, feedback, and changes in the internal and external environment. 317 Based on the best available information. Risk management inputs are based on historical data, present observations, and expert judgment about the future. The limitations of this information must be acknowledged and communicated. 32 Essential terminology: risk appetite, tolerance, capacity, and thresholds. This lexicon is crucial for setting boundaries and making informed decisions about risk. 321 Risk capacity: the maximum amount of risk an organization can absorb, given its capital structure, resources, and obligations, before it faces existential threat. It is an absolute ceiling, often determined by regulatory capital requirements or debt covenants. Example: a bank's regulatory capital dictates its absolute capacity for credit risk. 322 Risk appetite: the amount and type of risk an organization is willing to pursue or accept in pursuit of its strategic objectives. It is a high-level, strategic statement of desired risk posture. Example: we have a low appetite for reputational risk but a high appetite for calculated technological innovation risk to achieve market leadership. 323 Risk tolerance: the acceptable level of variation in performance relative to the achievement of a specific objective. Tolerances are the operationalization of appetite, often set quantitatively. Example: while the appetite is for moderate financial risk, the tolerance for a specific investment portfolio might be maximum loss of 5% of value in any quarter. 324 Risk thresholds: the specific, quantified points that trigger an action or escalation. They are the practical, operational lines drawn from tolerances. Example: if project costs exceed the budget by 10%, threshold, it must be escalated to the steering committee. 33 Risk culture: the human element, the collective set of values, beliefs, knowledge, attitudes, and understanding about risk shared by a group of people. 331 Definition and importance: culture is the tone at the top and the mood in the middle. It determines how risk management is perceived and practiced by every employee. Every day a weak culture can render the most sophisticated framework useless. 332 Attributes of a strong risk culture: tone from the top, visible commitment and leadership from the board and C-suite, accountability, clear ownership of risks and controls, effective challenge: employees feel safe to speak up and challenge assumptions without fear of reprisal, open communication and transparency, willingness to share bad news as well as good incentives, compensation and promotion are aligned with prudent risk-taking, not just short-term gains. 333 Measuring risk culture: through methods like cultural assessments, employee surveys, focus groups, and analyzing key metrics, e.g. number of near misses reported, whistleblower calls. 34 Governance, roles, and responsibilities: 3 lines of defense model. A clear governance structure is essential to avoid confusion, duplication of effort, and accountability gaps. 341 The 3 lines of defense model: a widely adopted framework for clarifying roles in risk management and control. First line of defense: risk owners and operational management functions that own and manage risk directly as part of their primary responsibilities, e.g., sales, manufacturing, project management. They are responsible for identifying, assessing, and implementing controls for the risks in their day-to-day activities. Second line of defense: risk management and compliance functions, independent functions that oversee and challenge the first line. They establish the risk framework, policies, tools, and reporting, provide expertise, and monitor the effectiveness of the risk management activities, e.g., Chief Risk Officer. Compliance Officer: third line of defense: internal audit provides independent, objective assurance to the Board and Audit Committee on the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and internal controls of the first and second lines. They answer the question, is the system working as intended? 342 key roles, Board of Directors, ultimate responsibility for risk oversight, sets risk appetite and tolerances. Audit and Risk Committees, subcommittees of the Board that focus on detailed oversight of financial reporting, risk management, and internal control. Chief Risk Officer, CRO, is senior executive responsible for leading the second line, facilitating the ERM process, and reporting on the risk profile to the Board. Management, responsible for executing strategy within the risk boundaries set by the Board and for implementing effective risk management practices. Part 2, the Risk Management Framework, RMF, Chapter 4, Introduction to Risk Management Frameworks. Chapter Abstract. This chapter serves as the gateway to understanding the architecture of organized risk management. It answers the fundamental question of why a structured framework is indispensable for success, rather than ad hoc efforts. It provides a comparative analysis of the two dominant global frameworks, distills the universal components present in any effective system, and provides a practical guide for tailoring these components to an organization's unique context, ensuring the framework is a value-adding asset, not a bureaucratic burden. 41 Why a framework? Structure for Success. 411 Beyond ad hoc reactions, contrasts a framework-based approach with informal, reactive risk handling. An ad hoc approach is characterized by firefighting, inconsistency, siloed information, and an inability to see the big picture of interconnected risks. 412 The value of a structured approach. A framework provides consistency and comparability, creates a common language and methodology, allowing risks across different departments, e.g., IT, HR, finance, to be assessed and compared on a like-for-like basis. Comprehensive coverage ensures all areas of the organization are considered, reducing the chance of risk blind spots. Accountability and governance clearly defines roles, responsibilities, and reporting lines, embedding risk ownership into the organization's structure. Efficiency standardizes processes, tools, and reporting, reducing duplication of effort and creating economies of scale. Continuous improvement builds in mechanisms for learning, review, and adaptation, ensuring the risk management practice matures over time. 413 The business case. A robust framework is not a cost center, it is an enabler of strategic objectives. It protects assets, enhances decision-making, improves operational resilience, and builds stakeholder confidence. 42 Comparing major frameworks, COSO, ERM and ISO 31000:2018. This section provides a high-level comparative overview, setting the stage for the deeper dives in chapters 5 and 6. Feature COSO Enterprise Risk Management ISO 31000:2018 Origin USA, Treadway Commission, focused initially on financial reporting and internal controls. International, ISO, developed by Global Consensus. Nature framework more prescriptive, structured, and detailed, often described as a cube with interlocking components. International standard principles based, providing high-level guidelines and recommendations. More flexible and adaptable. Primary audience heavily adopted by publicly listed companies in the U.S. due to SOX compliance. Strong focus on Board and Audit Committee governance. Universal, applicable to any organization, regardless of size, industry, or sector, public, private, nonprofit. Core structure. 5 interrelated components, BR1, Governance and Culture. Branch 2, Strategy and Objective Setting. Branch 3, Performance. Branch 4, Review and Revision. Branch 5, Information, Communication, and Reporting. BR supported by 23 principles. 3 core elements, BR1. Principles, 11 foundational tenets, BR2. Framework, Mandate, Design, Implementation, Evaluation, Improvement. BR3. Process, Communication, Context, Assessment, Treatment. M&E, Key emphasis: integration with strategy and performance. Strong emphasis on culture, governance, and aligning risk appetite with strategy. Creating and protecting value. Focus on the integration of risk management into all organizational processes and decision-making best suited for organizations seeking it. Detailed, structured model with strong governance linkages, especially those in regulated industries or needing to comply with SOX organizations seeking a flexible, principles-based approach that can be customized to any context without a one-size-fits-all prescription. Conclusion: the frameworks are complementary, not competing. Many organizations use ISO 31000's principles and process to inform their overall approach while using COSO's detailed components to structure their governance and reporting. 43 key components of a universal framework. Regardless of the chosen standard, any effective risk management framework will consist of the following core components: 431 governance and oversight. The structure that defines how risk is directed and controlled includes the role of the board, committees, management, and the 3 lines of defense. Model 432 policies and procedures, the documented set of principles, rules, and guidelines that dictate how the framework operates. This includes the risk management policy, appetite statement, and standard operating procedures. 433 The risk management process, the iterative cycle of activities for managing risk, e.g., identification, assessment, treatment, monitoring. This is the engine of the framework. 434 Tools and enablers, the practical instruments used to execute the process, including risk registers, risk matrices, assessment software, GRC platforms, and reporting dashboards. 435 Culture and communication, the mechanisms for fostering the desired risk culture and for ensuring effective internal and external communication and reporting on risk. 436 Continuous improvement, the feedback loops, e.g., audits, reviews, lessons learned exercises, that ensure the framework itself is regularly evaluated and enhanced. 44 Customizing a framework for your organization. A framework is a blueprint, not a finished building. It must be adapted to fit. 441 Assessing organizational context, external, industry, regulatory environment, competitive landscape, geopolitical factors. Internal, organizational size, complexity, culture, maturity, strategic objectives, and existing processes. 442 Scoping and phasing, an organization does not need to implement everything at once. A phased rollout is often most effective. Pilot programs, launch the framework in one division or for one type of risk, e.g., project risk, to demonstrate value and work out kinks before enterprise-wide rollout. Maturity modeling, assess the current state of risk management maturity and plan initiatives to progress to the next level. 443 Integration with existing processes, the framework should not create a parallel universe. It must be woven into strategic planning, risk assessment as part of the annual planning cycle, project management, risk registers for major projects, audit planning, informing internal audit based on the risk profile, performance management, aligning personal objectives with risk-aware behavior. 444 Practical considerations, tailoring the language of the risk appetite statement, the complexity of the risk matrix, and the frequency of reporting to be fit for purpose for the organization's specific needs. Chapter 5, the ISO 31000:2018 Standard in-depth chapter. Abstract. This chapter provides a comprehensive examination of the ISO 31000:2018 standard, the globally recognized benchmark for risk management. We will deconstruct its 3 core elements, the foundational principles that guide its philosophy, the organizational framework that mandates and supports it, and the iterative process that brings it to life. The chapter concludes with a practical guide to implementing the standard, transforming its guidelines into tangible organizational practice. 51 Principles, the foundation for effective risk management. ISO 31000 is built upon 11 foundational principles. These are not steps but essential characteristics that make risk management effective. If any principle is missing, the process will be less effective. 1. Integrated, risk management is an integral part of all organizational activities, not a separate function. 2. Structured and comprehensive, a structured approach contributes to consistent and comparable results. 3. Customized, the framework and process are tailored to the organization's external and internal context and objectives. 4. Inclusive, appropriate and timely involvement of stakeholders enables their knowledge, views, and perceptions to be considered. 5. Dynamic, risk management anticipates detects, acknowledges, and responds to changes in the external and internal contexts. 6. Best available information. Risk management inputs are based on both historical and current information, and are subject to limitations and uncertainty. 7. Human and cultural factors. These factors influence all aspects of risk management, from perception to execution. 8. Continual improvement. Risk management is enhanced through learning and experience, striving for better practice over time. 9. Value creation and protection. The purpose of risk management is not just to prevent loss but to enable the achievement of objectives and the creation of value. 10. Addresses uncertainty. The core of risk management is explicitly dealing with the effects of uncertainty on objectives. 11. Systematic, timely, and iterative. A systematic, timely, and regularly repeated process ensures reliability and responsiveness. 52. The framework. Leadership, integration, design, implementation, evaluation, improvement. The framework is the organizational architecture that must be established to support and mandate the risk management process. It ensures risk management is not an isolated activity. 521. Leadership and commitment. Mandate and commitment. Senior management and the board must demonstrate leadership and commitment by designing and endorsing the risk management policy, ensuring resources are allocated, aligning risk management with strategic objectives. This creates the essential tone from the top. 522. Integration. Design. The organization must integrate the risk management framework into its overall governance, strategy, planning, management, reporting, policies, values, and culture. This is the principle of integration made actionable. 523. Framework design. Designing a framework involves understanding the organization's context and defining the architecture of the framework, e.g., policies, processes, accountabilities, how risk management will be embedded into business activities, how the framework will be evaluated for effectiveness. 524. Implementation. Putting the framework into practice. This involves developing an implementation plan, applying the risk management policy and process, providing necessary resources and training, establishing accountability through the 3 lines of defense. 525. Evaluation and improvement. Monitoring and review. The framework must not be static. The organization must measure framework performance against its intended purpose, identify opportunities for improvement from lessons learned and changes in context, adapt and improve the framework continuously. 53. The process. A detailed walk through the ISO 31000 process is a systematic series of activities that can be applied at any level. It is iterative. Any step can influence any other. 531. Communication and consultation. This is not a single step but a continuous activity that must occur throughout the entire process. It ensures stakeholders are informed, engaged, and their perspectives are considered, leading to better risk criteria and informed decision-making. 532. Scope, context, and criteria. Establishing the context, defining the internal and external parameters, e.g., PESEL analysis, organizational culture, capabilities, to be considered when managing risk. Defining risk criteria. The terms of reference against which the significance of risk is evaluated. This includes defining the organization's risk appetite, risk tolerance, and the scales used to measure likelihood and impact. 533. Risk assessment. The core analytical phase. Risk identification, finding, recognizing, and describing risks that could help or hinder the achievement of objectives. Risk analysis. Comprehending the nature of risk and determining its level. Analysis provides an input to risk evaluation, decisions on treatment, and priorities. It can be qualitative, semi-quantitative, or quantitative. Risk evaluation, supporting decisions by comparing the results of the risk analysis with the established risk criteria to determine whether the risk is acceptable or tolerable. The output is a prioritized list of risks for treatment. 534. Risk treatment. The process to modify risk, selecting and implementing one or more options, avoid, change, take, remove, share, to address risks. It involves planning and executing risk treatment plans with clear actions, owners, and timelines. 535. Monitoring and review. The ongoing activities of monitoring the external and internal context, tracking risk treatment progress, and reviewing the effectiveness of both controls and the framework itself. 536 Recording and reporting, the process of documenting the entire risk management process and its outcomes, and communicating them to stakeholders. The risk register is the primary output of this activity. 54 Implementing ISO 31000, a practical guide. 541 Gap analysis and readiness assessment, evaluate current risk management practices against the ISO 31000 principles and framework components to identify strengths and weaknesses. 542 Secure leadership sponsorship, this is the single most critical success factor. The initiative must be championed by a C-level executive or the board. 543 Develop a project plan, treat the implementation as a major project. Define scope, objectives, resources, timeline, and key milestones. 544 Develop and communicate the risk management policy, a concise document, endorsed by leadership, that states the organization's commitment to risk management and outlines its approach, objectives, and appetite. 545 Develop tools and templates, create or adapt practical tools for the organization, a risk register template, risk assessment matrices, reporting dashboards, and process guides. 546 Pilot the process, roll out the new framework and process in a single, receptive business unit or for a specific project. Use this to refine the approach, demonstrate value, and create success stories. 547 Train and build competence, conduct tailored training for different audiences, awareness for all staff, in-depth training for risk owners and facilitators, and specialized training for the risk management team. 548 Enterprise-wide rollout, expand the framework across the organization based on lessons learned from the pilot, using a phased approach. 549 Audit, review, and continuously improve, schedule regular internal audits of the framework's effectiveness. Use feedback and changes in the business environment to adapt and improve the system continually. Chapter 6. The COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework. Chapter Abstract. This chapter delves into the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission, COSO, Enterprise Risk Management, ERM, framework, a dominant model, particularly in North America. We will deconstruct its iconic cube structure, explore its 5 interconnected components and 20 supporting principles in detail, and provide practical guidance for its application across various organizational contexts. This chapter emphasizes COSO's strategic integration of risk management with strategy and performance, moving beyond its roots in internal control. 61 Overview of the COSO Cube and its components. The COSO ERM framework is most famously visualized as a three-dimensional cube, representing the integration of its core elements. 611 The three dimensions, 5 components, front to back. The fundamental, interrelated elements of an effective ERM system. They represent the what of ERM, what needs to be done to. 8 Enterprise objectives, top to bottom. The categories of objectives an organization strives to achieve. ERM is designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of these objectives. They represent the why we manage risk: strategic, operations, reporting, compliance. 3 Organizational structure, left to right. The entity, division, operating unit, and subsidiary levels through which the components are applied. They represent the who/where, who does it and where it is applied. 612 The philosophy of integration. The cube illustrates that ERM is not a linear process. Effective risk management requires that all 5 components are present and functioning effectively across the entire organization, all units, to support the achievement of objectives in all 4 categories. 62 5 Components of COSO ERM. The 2017 update, Enterprise Risk Management Integrating with Strategy and Performance, reframed the components to emphasize their strategic role. 621 Governance and culture. Purpose: governance sets the organization's tone, reinforcing the importance of ERM. Culture embodies the ethical values, desired behaviors, and understanding of risk at all levels. Key elements: exercises board risk oversight, establishes operating structures, defines desired culture, demonstrates commitment to core values, attracts and retains capable individuals. 622 Strategy and objective setting. Purpose: ERM is integrated into the business strategy formulation process. Risk Appetite is established and aligned with strategy key elements, analyzes business context, defines risk appetite, evaluates alternative strategies, formulates business objectives. This is where the organization chooses which risks to take to create value. 623 Performance, purpose, identifies and assesses risks that may impact the achievement of strategy and business objectives, and prioritizes them as a basis for selecting risk responses. Key elements, identifies risk, assesses severity of risk, prioritizes risks, implements risk responses. This corresponds to the traditional risk assessment and risk treatment phases of the process. 624 Review and revision, purpose, assesses substantial change and reviews risk performance and the progress of ERM. The organization learns from experience and improves. Key elements, assesses substantial change, reviews risk and performance, pursues improvement in ERM. 625 Information, communication, and reporting, purpose, leverages information and technology and fosters ongoing communication and reporting to support all components of ERM. Key elements, leverages information systems, communicates risk information, reports on risk, culture, and performance. This ensures risk information flows up, down, and across the organization. 6320 Core principles explained. Each of the 5 components is supported by key principles that provide more specific guidance. These principles are the true test of whether a component is functioning effectively. Governance and culture. 1. Exercises board risk oversight. 2. Establishes operating structures. 3. Defines desired culture. 4. Demonstrates commitment to core values. 5. Attracts, develops, and retains capable individuals. Strategy and objective setting. 6. Analyzes business context. 7. Defines risk appetite. 8. Evaluates alternative strategies. 9. Formulates business objectives. Performance. 10. Identifies risk. 11. Assesses severity of risk. 12. Prioritizes risks. 13. Implements risk responses. 14. Develops portfolio view, review and revision. 15. Assesses substantial change. 16. Reviews risk and performance. 17. Pursues improvement in ERM information, communication, and reporting. 18. Leverages information systems. 19. Communicates risk information. 20. Reports on risk, culture, and performance. 64. Applying COSO ERM in different organizational contexts. COSO is a framework, not a prescription. Its application must be scaled and tailored. 641 For large, publicly traded corporations, focus, strong governance. SOX compliance, detailed reporting to the board and regulators. Application, a formal, well-resourced ERM function. Second line, supports a complex organizational structure. The framework is applied comprehensively across all components and principles. 642 For small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. Focus, practicality, integration with core business processes, avoiding bureaucracy. Application, the application is more informal and integrated. The owner/CEO often drives the tone at the top. The focus is on key risks to strategic objectives and operations. Documentation is streamlined. 643 For government and not-for-profit organizations, focus, stewardship of public funds, accountability to stakeholders, achieving mission-based objectives, rather than value creation. Application, emphasis is on the operations, reporting, and compliance objectives. Risk appetite is often heavily influenced by legislation and public scrutiny. 644 Key to successful application, principle-based, not checklist-based. Use the 20 principles as a guide for what should be in place, not a mandatory checklist. Align with organizational rhythm, integrate risk discussions into existing management meetings, strategic planning cycles, and performance reviews. Focus on integration. The goal is not to create a separate ERM activity but to enhance existing decision-making processes with a sharper focus on risk and opportunity. Part 3, The Risk Management Process, a Methodological Deep Dive. Chapter 7, Step 1. Communication and Consultation. Chapter Abstract. This chapter establishes communication and consultation not as a standalone step, but as the vital, continuous lifeblood of the entire risk management process. It is the thread that connects every activity, ensuring stakeholder buy-in, enriching the quality of information, and embedding risk awareness into the organizational fabric. We will explore systematic methods for identifying and understanding stakeholders, practical techniques for conveying risk information effectively, and the foundational work of building a culture where open dialogue about risk is encouraged and valued. 71 Engaging stakeholders. Identifying and mapping effective risk management is impossible without understanding and involving those who affect or are affected by risks and decisions. This requires a structured approach. 711 Defining stakeholders. Any individual, group, or organization that can affect, be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by it. Risk or a decision related to risk. This includes both internal and external parties. 712 Stakeholder identification. Internal, Board of Directors, Executive Management, Employees, Internal Audit, Risk and Compliance Functions, Business Unit Leaders. External, Regulators, Shareholders/Investors, Customers, Suppliers and Partners, Competitors, Local Communities, Media. 713 Stakeholder mapping and analysis. Once identified, stakeholders must be analyzed to determine the nature and depth of their involvement. Common models include power/interest grid, classifies stakeholders based on their power to influence decisions and their interest in the outcome. This dictates the communication strategy. High power, high interest, manage closely, e.g., board, CEO. Key regulators engage deeply and frequently. High power, low interest, keep satisfied, e.g., senior executives not directly involved keep informed and ensure no major objections. Low power, high interest, keep informed, e.g., employees. Community groups adequately inform to ensure support. Low power, low interest, monitor, minimal effort required, but monitor for changes in position, influence/impact. Grid, similar to power/interest, but focuses on the stakeholders' ability to influence the risk itself and the impact the risk has on them. 72 Techniques for effective risk communication. Communication is the exchange of risk information. It must be tailored to the audience, purpose, and context to be effective. 721 Principles of effective risk communication. Clarity and jargon-free. Avoid technical risk management terminology when communicating with non-specialists. Use clear, concise language, timely and relevant. Provide information when it is needed for decision-making, not after the fact. Ensure it is relevant to the audience's concerns and objectives. Transparent and honest. Acknowledge uncertainties and limitations. Building trust is essential. Once lost, it is difficult to regain. Two-way dialogue. Communication is not a broadcast. It must encourage feedback, questions, and challenge. 722 Tailoring the message to the audience. Board of Directors, high level, strategic focus. Link risks to strategic objectives and performance. Focus on the so what. Impact on value, reputation, and viability. Use heat maps and summary dashboards. Senior management, blend of strategic and operational. Focus on risks within their domain, treatment actions, and resource requirements. Operational staff, practical, specific, and actionable. Focus on risks in their daily tasks, control procedures, and what to do if something goes wrong. Use clear procedures and checklists. External stakeholders, messaging must be appropriate for the public domain. Focus on how risks are being managed responsibly to protect their interests, e.g., customer data, community safety, investor value. 723 Communication channels, formal, risk reports, policy documents, committee presentations, formal consultations, informal, team meetings, workshops, intranet portals, internal social media, one-on-one conversations. 73 Building a consultative culture. Consultation is a two-way process of seeking and receiving input from stakeholders. It is the mechanism for building a participative risk culture. 731 Consultation vs. communication. While communication can be one way, consultation is inherently collaborative. It involves actively seeking the views and knowledge of others to improve decision-making, gain buy-in, and ensure all perspectives are considered. 732 Techniques for effective consultation. Risk workshops, structured sessions to identify, assess, or treat risks. They leverage group knowledge and build shared ownership. Interviews, one-on-one sessions with subject matter experts or key individuals to gather in-depth, Nuanced insights surveys and questionnaires, useful for gathering input from a large, dispersed group of stakeholders on specific risk topics or cultural perceptions. Delphi technique, an anonymous, multi-round survey process with controlled feedback, used to build expert consensus on controversial or novel risks without the influence of dominant personalities. 733 Fostering psychological safety, the cornerstone of a consultative culture. Individuals must feel safe to speak up, report issues, challenge assumptions, and admit mistakes without fear of reprisal or embarrassment. Leadership behavior, leaders must actively invite dissent, acknowledge their own fallibility, and reward, rather than punish, the bringing of bad news. Non-retaliation policies, formal policies that protect whistleblowers and those who raise concerns in good faith. Acting on input, nothing destroys a consultative culture faster than seeking input and then ignoring it. Stakeholders must see that their contributions lead to tangible action or, if not, receive an explanation as to why. Chapter 8, Step 2, Establishing the Context. Chapter Abstract. This chapter addresses the crucial, yet often overlooked, foundational step of the risk management process, establishing the context. Before a single risk can be identified, the organization must define the environment in which it operates and the parameters against which risk will be evaluated. This involves a thorough analysis of the external and internal environment, and most importantly, the establishment of risk criteria, the rules of the game that will guide all subsequent assessment and decision-making. A poorly defined context guarantees that the entire risk process will be misaligned and ineffective. 81 The external context, PESEL analysis, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental. The external context consists of all the factors outside the organization that can influence its ability to achieve objectives. A PESEL analysis provides a structured framework for scanning this macro environment. 811 Political, factors related to government policy, political stability, trade controls, and geopolitics. Examples: changes in government, election cycles, tax policy, corruption levels, international trade agreements or tariffs, political unrest in key markets. Risk relevance, impacts regulatory environment, market access, cost structures, and operational stability. 812 Economic, factors affecting the economy and the organization's financial position. Examples: economic growth rates, interest rates, inflation, exchange rates, unemployment levels, disposable income, credit availability. Risk relevance, directly influences demand for products/services, cost of capital, profitability, and investment decisions. 813 Social, demographic and cultural aspects of the external environment. Examples: population growth rates, age distribution, career attitudes, health consciousness, cultural norms, social mobility, consumer lifestyles. Risk relevance, shapes market trends, consumer preferences, labor market dynamics, and corporate social responsibility expectations. 814 Technological, factors related to innovation, technological development, and automation. Examples: R&D activity, automation, technology incentives, rate of technological change, disruptive technologies, e.g., AI, blockchain. Risk relevance, can create new opportunities or render existing products/processes obsolete. Major driver of cybersecurity risk and operational efficiency. 815 Legal, factors pertaining to legislation and regulation. Examples: employment law, health and safety regulations, antitrust laws, consumer protection laws, data privacy regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA. Risk relevance, defines the rules of operation. Non-compliance can lead to fines, litigation, and reputational damage. 816 Environmental, ecological and environmental aspects. Examples: weather, climate change, environmental regulations, carbon emissions targets, sustainability trends, waste disposal. Risk relevance, affects physical assets, e.g., from extreme weather, regulatory costs, brand reputation, and long-term resource availability. 82 The internal context, objectives, culture, structure, and capabilities. The internal context includes everything within the organization that influences how it manages risk. It defines the organization's capacity to handle risk. 821 Objectives and strategies. The organization's mission, vision, values, and, most critically, its specific strategic and operational objectives. Risks are ultimately measured against their potential impact on these objectives. This is the primary lens for risk assessment. 822 Organizational structure, governance, and roles. How the organization is organized, centralized vs decentralized, its lines of reporting, and the defined roles and responsibilities for risk management, e.g., 3 lines of defense model. 823 Policies, processes, and capabilities. The existing internal rules, operational processes, and inherent capabilities, e.g., skilled workforce, technology stack, intellectual property, financial resources, that can either mitigate or exacerbate risk. 824 Organizational culture, the set of shared values, beliefs, and norms that influence attitudes and behaviors towards risk. A weak culture, e.g., shoot the messenger, will undermine even the most sophisticated risk framework. 825 Stakeholders and relationships. The internal stakeholders, employees, managers, and the nature of the relationships with key external stakeholders, key customers, suppliers, partners. 83 Defining the risk criteria, appetite, tolerance, and scales. This is the most critical output of the establishing the context step. Risk criteria are the benchmarks used to evaluate the significance of risk and to make decisions. Without them, risk assessment is subjective and meaningless. 831 Risk appetite, revisited in detail. The types and amount of risk. On a broad level, an organization is willing to accept or pursue in pursuit of its strategic objectives. It is a high-level, qualitative statement that sets the strategic direction. Example: appetite statements. We have a zero appetite for unethical conduct or breaches of safety protocols. We have a high appetite for strategic risks associated with entering new markets to achieve growth targets. We have a low appetite for financial risks that could threaten our liquidity. 832 Risk tolerance, revisited in detail. The acceptable levels of variation in performance relative to the achievement of a specific objective. Tolerances are quantitative and operationalize the appetite. Example: tolerance statements, linked to the appetite. Above appetite, low appetite for financial risks. Tolerance: therefore, we will not allow our cash reserves to fall below an amount equivalent to 3 months of operating expenses. Tolerance: therefore, our maximum tolerable value at risk. VAR, for the investment portfolio, is $5 million over a 1-month horizon. 833 Defining assessment scales. The organization must define consistent scales for measuring likelihood and impact to ensure objective and comparable assessments. Likelihood scale, a defined set of probabilities or frequencies, e.g., 1 in 10 years, 1 in 100 years, or qualitative, rare, unlikely, possible, likely, almost certain. Impact scale, defined consequences for various objective categories. This must be customized. Financial impact, e.g., insignificant, $10,000 minor, $10K, $100K moderate, $100K, $1M major, $1M, $10M catastrophic, $10 million. Reputational impact, e.g., insignificant, localized, short-term media attention. Catastrophic, sustained negative international media, loss of brand trust, key executive resignations. Operational impact, e.g., minor, minor process delay, 1 day, catastrophic, cessation of critical operations for 1 week. 834 The risk matrix, the combination of the likelihood and impact scales creates a risk matrix, or heat map, which provides the visual criteria for determining a risk's priority level, e.g., low, medium, high, extreme. The criteria for each rating must be defined in this stage. Chapter 9, Step 3, Risk Identification. Chapter Abstract. This chapter focuses on the proactive and systematic process of finding, recognizing,